Okay. 5, 4, 3. Hey folks, welcome to our brown bag today. We're going to be discussing dealing with private and sensitive data. So basically dealing with privacy, security concerns when we're developing our applications, or as we like to talk about it, coding with due diligence and being sure to CYA. That's the important part for us. So I'm Clair, so I'm on the database practice lead. I'll be handling the database side of things.
I'm Jeremy Holley. I'm mainly specialized in middle tier applications. I'll be handling middle tier security.
And I'm Chris. I do front end stuff.
Yay, Chris. Great, one of us got a Yahoo. We feel loved. So anyway, the intent of this presentation is to just educate everybody on when you're dealing with private or sensitive data. We want to make sure that we are aware of it at a super high level, understand what the requirements, rules, and laws are. Kind of educate you on what you should do and need to do when you're at the client and you're dealing with this. From my perspective, help you to CYA as you appropriately need to do, and then understand that STG has your back anytime we're dealing with this kind of information. Primarily, what are we talking about? So anytime your application deals with PII or HIPAA or PCI in particular, that should be raising the flag. That's what we really want to pay attention to for this. And there might be other privacy and security data we want to be aware of. So just real quick for you folks, who here knows what PII is? Right, personal information of some sort. So, yeah, it's sensitive information that can be used to identify you. We should all be aware of this because for the most part, Experian got hacked and, you know, we're all hosed, right? So y'all can read this. I'm not going to read it verbatim to you. We're mostly adults here. What are examples of PII data that we need to be aware of? And this is a real short list, but just kind of check out stuff here. Your home address is PII. Your telephone number, date of birth, your face, your fingerprints. You know, some of this stuff kind of makes sense to us, but your login name, your screen name, that's PII. So if we see any of this information when we're having to design something or build something, we now need to be on alert about, uh-oh, what do I have to do? The more entertaining one for me is HIPAA. So that's anything that's dealing with health information. And this sets the standard for how they want us to be protecting health information. Where this really gets tricky is when you combine PII with health information. So now I can identify not only who you are, but health information about you. And quite honestly, I'd like to keep my health pretty much to myself. I think we all would, right? We're going to blow through this so we can have more of a discussion here in a minute. So when you combine information with this health information, now we get into tricky territory. So again, if you're talking about, you know, I have cancer and it's my name. Hey, here's a list of cancer patients and it's my license plate number. Uh-oh, license plate number? Yeah, that identifies me. Social security number, hello, duh. Full face photographs. You know, please don't post my picture with like, you know, has cancer type of thing. And then more entertaining, especially for you guys, is when we start getting into PCI security. This is the financial world. So out of curiosity, the people who are here in the room, those of you who are watching, tough. But how many of you are dealing with any kind of financial apps right now? A whole bunch of hands went up. So, I mean, what do we want to deal with?
Well, with PCI information, you're dealing with things like credit card numbers, protected credit card holder data, things like their credit limit, how much was charged, how much is left. Those are all PCI security items. Those all have to be encrypted in any form, when they're in motion, when they're at rest. ideally you would tokenize them, but if you're working in a system that has to save the card information, you have to add a additional layer of encryption on top of a database layer. So you want to encrypt like account numbers on your credit cards or the bank account number. That has to all be encrypted by law, or there's pretty hefty fines for all of these if you violate them. You can't do things like save the 3 little numbers on the back anywhere in your database. You can ask for it and use it for authentication, but you can't save it anywhere for any future reference.
And that's what we're building here. First off is just understanding what these 3 key areas are. Right. PII, just what information identifies you that lets me know it's Clair, specifically we're talking about. HIPAA is my health information. Right. And then the PCI is my credit card information.
Right. Basically your financial information.
The financial information that we're playing with. And we can send this out to anybody who'd like to have this information, but there's a bunch of websites. We've listed 3 here where you can go to get information about what the requirements are, the rules are, the laws are. So for PII, that's a nice long-winded one. We'll email that out to you if you're interested. HIPAA, PCI Security, these are great places to go to that we should all research just so that we have an understanding, whether it's from a database perspective or middle tier or front end. Realistically, QA should be aware of this. The folks just doing the design should be aware of any of this, of just triggers to know, okay, wait, I'm seeing information. Now I have to just make sure all my bases are covered. So as developers, what's our responsibility? So here's just my kind of fun slide. So, I mean, as you guys look at these bullet points, I mean, what's our responsibility when we are dealing with PII, HIPAA, PCI? I mean, do we just kind of go, I'm a consultant. I just do what I'm told. I don't care. Hey, you know, my job is just to code. I'm assuming somebody else did this. Do we sit there and take the other approach where I'm not touching a thing until I know everything has been, every T is crossed and every I is dotted? Do I bring it up to somebody's attention and go, okay, well, I let my boss know I'm done? Do I call my account manager and say, help? I mean, what do you guys think? What do we do?
I'd say absolutely be in touch with the account manager, because as you said in the beginning, the whole point of your presentation is better for us knowing how to CYA. I mean, as consultants, I feel like we're the perfect fall guy. We're just someone trying to design. So
basically, at least let our account manager know, hey, just so you know, this project I'm on is dealing with some sensitive information. I may be contacting you if I have any questions or just to be aware of things. And look, whenever in doubt. So not only your account manager, but check with your practice lead. So the practice leads, we try to be aware of this stuff, heads up. You know, hope I didn't just make some practice lead panic going, oh, he just volunteered me. But, you know, we're the folks to contact when you have questions. And if we don't know it, we'll follow up. We'll check things, get you the right direction. What we really want to make sure everybody knows here is that STG is going to have your back at any client. What those of us who've been around for a long time with STG, what we want to realize is there's generally 2 types of clients we're going to run into. There's clients that are knowledgeable. The LDS Church is a good example. Big place. They got 400 plus people, huge IT staff. They're really aware. So a lot of times at the church, we are simply staff augmentation. We're coming in to augment, help them out. But some of us might be at much smaller clients, and they look at us as the expert. We are the expert. Hey, I brought you guys in. You're supposed to know. And what we want to make sure of is that nobody comes back on us and says, hey, you're the expert. Why didn't your person tell us to not do it this way or do it that way or this or that? Does that make sense? So that's that part of that CYA we talked about is, hey, what am I? Am I simply augmenting a big company that knows what they're doing? Or are they looking at me as the all-knowing suit? Yo, Chris.
That's a really good point. I love those 2 roles that we fill. The other thing I'd say is probably about the client side, they view us a lot of times as partners.
Okay.
We're there to help them.
So partners to help.
So if we think, and sometimes we go in and, yeah, they look at us like, you're here, you're just here to do what I tell you. So, yeah, very few clients that way. Most of the time they turn into, hey, we really love SCG, we love your people, we love how you guys help us. I think if we keep that in mind, that we're there to help them. So as much as, hey, if I see something good, bad, it's going to happen to my friend, I'm going to let them know.
Right.
Hey, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, you're at risk.
Right. So no matter what the size of the client is, we are there to help, to educate. You know, even the church is to help them out. So a big IHC, your real big corporations, we're there to partner with them and help everybody. Would that be? So where is this in play? Now we're going to get to all three of us talking, so it's not so much me. Where do we have to worry about this information? And really, I mean, the easy answer is everywhere. But the three main areas we have to worry about is when data is at rest, data is in motion, and data is in display. So it isn't just a simple thing of, okay, I mean, we've really got to worry about all over the place. So
My turn.
let's talk about front end for a minute.
Let's talk about front end. So here's a good question. Is HTTPS enough? Is that this encrypted back end or front end?
The question, I'm going to say no.
You're going to say no?
Yeah, just because you asked the question. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't think so?
I wouldn't think so because all of it was still.
So what are other things that could happen even in an HTTPS system? Anybody know?
Values of URLs that goes through there and stuff, so that it's.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a good idea. So just to clarify for everybody here, so sometimes in routing systems, like people will expose, or systems will expose people's PII in the address of the URL. For example, like a user ID that like keys to the database. It's probably not a good idea. Claire's doing this, so probably no. So there's that. So what about cross-site forgery? Is that something we have to be worried about on the front end? How do we? Are there
same as cross-site scripting?
No, that's a separate thing. So cross-site scripting is basically someone else injecting content into the front end, a bad actor. And there's a lot of ways and strategies, and this could be its own brown bag of how to deal. Like a lot of these issues that we should tackle individually on the front end could be their own brown bags. So we're just sort of going over sort of a wide range. But cross-site scripting is when content is ejected into the page that's not supposed to be there. For example, in like a healthcare system, like some fake medical records that's not supposed to be there. So there's also cross-site forgery, where someone sets up a fake domain or a fake site to mimic your site and try to get access to people's cookies or other things to basically log them into the system. So there's a lot of things, and we don't have time to go over all of the things to protect against, but the answer to this question, you're right, is no, it's not enough. And there's a lot of things that we need to be careful of. The other thing too is saving things in local storage or IndexedDB, which is front-end caching technologies. Sometimes it's probably not the best idea. Or if a person logs out of the system, you need to make sure that that's cleared, because otherwise you've preserved PCI or PII in the front-end browser, and someone can get access to that when they're not supposed to. So,
And from my naive perspective,
yeah,
is a front end on, let's say, a laptop versus mobile, is that different, or is that kind of still the same? It's like you were just talking like caching and stuff. So is a mobile front end different from like, so me here on my laptop?
So on a back end, on a mobile app, so like in like an Android app, or so a native Android app or a native iOS app, those are usually compiled like Java or C, whatever they call that. It's like C#, but it's not. Swift, that's it.
I don't know.
So that, it's like you can probably encrypt the encryption keys and decryption keys for stuff there. So you could probably have like its own, because I know you can build SQLite into those And so like there's a potential there, but I don't necessarily think you need to.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where it's like just because you can, should you?
Cool. That kind of makes sense on like just front end issues to think about. Talk about like my middle tier.
Middle tier items. You've got this is where the data is truly in motion. And to go with a financial item, say somebody sends you a new credit card. That data is going to come from the front end to the back end, and it's going to come by HTTPS in a tunnel somehow. And the middle tier should encrypt it and then pass it to the back end while logging that it did something, not what the credit card number was. So basically, your middle tier starts logging all the actions. You should also look for things like if you build roles into your middle tier and don't allow any kind of role escalation attacks. You should set up good OAuth or various authorizations between your front end and back ends so that the middle tier can't be attacked by bad actors, man-in-the-middle attacks. And then it should also understand where it's ending up on the back end, say it's a database of whatever form. It should know exactly where it's going, how it's communicating. It should deal with mainly all of its like individual line item encryptions, all right there, and then pass it to the database to handle.
So what I would get from that right off the bat is that when we're in that initial design stages, you two should be talking.
Yes.
Or somebody should be talking just about, okay, I'm collecting, what do I have to do on the front end? How do I send it to you? How do you process it?
And how I deal with it. And then
you and I should talk.
Would talk to the DBA on how we're going to enter and pass that information and what that should look like at that point.
And where
It
this
could be two different things.
And where this comes into now is the database part. And there'll be an eventual future brown bag here, which we're jokingly calling right now DBAs, why you actually do want us. My little tongue in cheek. Because a lot of sites, yeah, a lot of people, a lot of places aren't using DBAs. The developers are doing that. The developers are building a database. Now, on the plus side for me, that's rocked because I keep getting contracts to go in and fix things because there's a reason why I have my skill set. But what we want to pay attention to from that database side is understanding PII, HIPAA, PCI. Okay, now, as we've talked, and we're about to get into the next slide here, but, what levels of encryption do we have to have? Can my database handle that? Where do I have to have it? Not only that, but my backups, my incremental backups, my full backups, everything I'm doing here, all that issue has to be. So really, all three layers should be talking and communicating. So that means our designers need to be aware of this. So our BAs, designers, QA again needs to be aware of this because QA should be pinging all three parts, in my perspective. When QA comes in, they should be making sure my database is whatever security it needs to have, should be trying to sneak in and beat up the middle tier. And then
the middle tier is not sharing more data than it needs.
And QA should be definitely making sure. And I think we all know a lot of clients don't have QAs. My last two have not had QAs, and it's killed me because they simply go, it ran? Yeah. It's ready for production, right? No, I said it ran. I don't trust me. Why are you trusting me? But they do. So next we're coming into, we've already alluded to it, is encryption. And the questions I have for the group is, when is encryption necessary? What needs to be encrypted? And sometimes, does performance override encryption? So do we all understand that encryption is going to slow things down to some degree? I mean, it kind of has to. So I've seen this. So when we get to the end, it's like, hey, sometimes do we have to look at performance and say, yeah, I understand encryption, but I need the speed. So starting up with the top again, when do we think encryption is needed? We've already kind of hit it, but when do you guys think it's needed? And I say guys because other than Jennifer, there's only guys here. Okay, so let's talk actually in the front end. So what do you have to encrypt?
Well, so the front end shouldn't encrypt things directly because that means that the front end has to have the encryption key,
Right.
which is then exposed to anybody that can look at the JavaScript files. So the front end should not be encrypting anything. The browser should handle all of the encryption in terms of the HTTPS and the TLS communication between the front end and the back end. Yeah. So
We rely on TLS from front end to middle tier. Middle tier in turn handles any individual encryption items that need to happen. So again, back to PCI, account numbers, social security numbers. Some people want those encrypted. I would say that's a good idea anytime. And so before the middle tier passes it to the database, it should handle all the encryption, and it in turn understands the encryption key and everything for that particular piece.
And we talk about the different areas here. Some of this type of data, especially when you get to HIPAA and PCI, requires encryption all the way down to the element level. So now we have to start looking at what database we're going to use, especially if you guys aren't going to employ a DBA. So we have a lot of NoSQL DBs out there now, so Mongo, MarkLogic. What we need to understand about those is they are strictly encrypted at rest, meaning the database is encrypted, and that's it. It's a document-driven system. That won't suffice for a lot of these deeper level encryptions where you need to have a table encrypted, or even within that, certain columns need to be encrypted. So we can really have at the column, at the table, at the database, then in transit.
In transit between us, and then TLS handles in transit from front end to middle.
And granted, not everybody has to have this responsibility, but we want it kind of in the back of your mind so that you guys know when you're at a client, hey, you know, maybe we should look this up, make sure things are here. But what do you guys think about performance? I mean, should that really override? You guys know how clients like to work sometimes. There's crickets happening right now.
I guess it would depend on the trade-off. The legal liability, should something be compromised, if that's going to destroy the business, then you'll wish you'd done more solid.
Well, I think it also depends on who you ask. I mean, if you ask a developer, obviously he's going to want to make it as elegant and as safe as you possibly can. Your business people, they're going to say, yeah, but if we're going that slow, we're not going to get any business, so why on earth are we writing this in the first place?
So have any of you guys really had to work with encryption that we're talking about, up and down the lanes? And I mean, the three of us have. Then you, Shane.
I'm curious, and you might touch on this, but we had this experience at the client a little bit, and it was, okay, how do we have this conversation now with the client to help them understand that there's a little bit of risk?
And that slide is coming up because the question is, how do we deal with that with the client? But before we.
So
right.
One note I do want to make.
Please, because I probably skipped your points. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. The one note I do want to make is that you don't always have to sacrifice performance for encryption. There are techniques on the front end that we can do, like optimistic updating, which is basically updating the data that we present to the user before we get the response back from the back end that it's okay. And as long as you have really, 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 really good data validation on the front end, it works 99% of the time. But you need a really good designer, and it's really challenging to implement those techniques, which means that you have to convince the client that, A, all this extra expense is necessary because we need the performance and we need the encryption. So sometimes you don't have to, I mean, there's like the encryption, the performance, and then there's the money, right? So one of those three probably has to give, but I don't think, everything has to be sacrificed for encryption.
And from a database dude's perspective, I love his comment. So for my front end people who are listening to this, that data validation, I wish people would do it more. So thank you, and please enforce it, because I'm the guy in the back end having to deal with cleaning stuff up. So I really, really, love that. Yes.
You can finish what you're going to say. I thought you were moving on.
I'm about to. Go ahead and go.
Okay, so I kind of thought of this maybe as from a user's perspective. We talked about this, DB and from a developer point of view. But from a user's perspective, I think, if I were a customer, I would be more than happy to sacrifice performance.
So your point is, hey, as a customer using this, I'm happy with a little bit slow if I know.
I'm willing to sit there and wait for things to encrypt, just so that my life doesn't fall apart because data was.
Right. So we actually have a third partner in here. We kind of have the developers, you've got your business people, but you got the customer. And you're right, with me, I am much happier to have this sucker slog if it needs to, if I know it's being. So what we have here is just some examples just to trigger things for you folks. So this is actually a real table from one of our clients. As an FYI, just because I like to do this, this was not designed by a DBA. This was a developer who knew what they were doing. And just out of curiosity, what do you see that's wrong with this table?
I'm just supposed to point.
Yeah. Don't help them. So what do you guys think is wrong with this table? Is there anything wrong with this table? You're shaking your heads, but give me something. So, sir, what's wrong with here? Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a PCI violation in and of itself to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars for every instance.
And this was actually in the table.
Yes.
I think even the card number.
Like is now a second step. Would training be beneficial? Training at a global level, at individual levels. If you notice, we're not talking language specific at all, because right now none of this matters. I don't care what your DBMS is. I don't care if it's Java.net. That's just the tool that we're going to use to employ all this whenever.
Got a question. When you've been talking with clients about this, have any of them brought up Equifax and been like, they're doing just fine, why do I need to care about this?
Not yet.
Not yet, but I mean, so, I think we all have that from the, so the question was brought up was Equifax's. As IT people, I think we all cringe going, seriously? As a database dude, I'm like, really, it wasn't encrypted? You guys are Equifax. How could you possibly not have like everything 4,000 layers of encryption deep? And some of it is just, we don't want to spend the money. It takes time to do that design to implement everything. But coming back to my example here, the only thing that isn't correct is at the client site, this table was actually called credit card. I kid you not.
Also known as Still Me.
Yeah, this was a one-stop shopping where I went ballistic when I saw this and said, you cannot do this for any number of reasons, right? We ought not to have all this information. But what they were doing was, hey, I need to send this out. We're going to send batches of payments out, so we're putting everything here. That logically makes sense, but they had never done anything from that financial perspective to understand. And what we want to make sure from an STG perspective is our people know, oh, wait a minute, we're going to be processing payments, credit cards, checks. Oh, that's triggering some stuff I need to make sure we're working with. Does that make sense to people? My next example was, this is actually a real design doc. So 2 points here. The display header has to show the case number, person's name, social security number, and their personal ID. And then the header below that should also include their driver's license and date of birth. Does that trigger any of the three we saw earlier?
Back
Because somebody said that's what the screen should show. I'm not arguing. I'm with you too. I beat my head against the wall. But what is this of the three? Which right here is just initially tripping? PII right off the bat, right? I mean, so we should have concerns right off the bat and be bringing that up to the client of, hello, can we legally show social security number on a screen?
No. Last 4 digits, but not the whole social security.
Okay, you can show the last 4. I prefer not to, that's my preference. In fact, I thought I read somewhere, but in general, if you have to verify someone's social security number, it should be
full mask.
Full mask below, and behind the scenes, something is checking A and B and making sure they're the same. And if you screw up the typing, whoops, can I have your social security number again? I must have typed that wrong. That makes sense? But from a design perspective as well now, so let's say we have to have a screen show this. A lot of times we'll find rules that say now you must have, what are those screens you put on, like on your screen that
Screen protector.
Screen protector, so
right?
Right?
People can't go surf over your shoulder and watch and see personal information of someone else. HIPAA gets really detailed in that one.
So, you know, I want the front end people to look at this and start to go, wow, do we really want to do this? Concerns everything else. So here's a nice little screen print they wanted to give. Is any of this private or sensitive? So we're talking about genetic disorders. Here's somebody's name with, they got cystic fibrosis. Is that enough to trip anything? Is it? I mean, it's a name. But is it? Because it's just a name. I mean, you know, John Smith, there's 400,000 John Smiths. Yeah, some of these might be a bit more unique. So this is, now we're into gray territory here. This may or may not trip because is there anything here? Yeah, Clair, not exactly a unique name for a guy, right? So that might be enough to narrow it down to me, but Jeremy Holley, a bit more generic, no offense.
There's a couple more generic, yeah.
You know, but is that really this Jeremy type of thing? Does that make sense? But at least I want you guys aware when you see this of, oh, hey, maybe.
So on this one, HIPAA compliance officers fall on both sides. Because I've heard yes and no on this one. So in my experience, best case was like mask part of the name. And then if they need to know that person, they can go, okay, well, their first name starts with a B and the last name starts with like a SCH or something like that. And they can go, okay, I think it's this one. They can click on it. Or ideally, everything's done using patient ID numbers.
Now this one might be kind of hard for you guys to see, but what do you see on here? So we've got person's name, the gender, the date of birth, their age, their email address, their phone number, secondary phone number, their address. But this might be a screen that needs to happen because somebody needs to pull this information up, right? I mean, did you want to comment on this?
Well, so just working with HIPAA in the past a lot. So like if this is a provide, like if a doctor is looking at this or someone that works in the insurance department, the claims department at the hospital or whatever, yeah, they need this information. But if I'm the janitor, no.
So now we start getting into security, right? Role-based, who can see what?
Yep.
Right? So getting into the fun stuff, so getting back to Experian now. So gaining non-approved access to sensitive data. So things we want to be aware of. And obviously, again, getting back to Experian, hacking the database. Okay, but that means typically working their way through an app, you know, finding the holes through the app, playing with SQL injection attacks to try to get understanding of all this stuff. From my perspective, I need to worry about my backups. My backups should always be encrypted in case someone does gain access to the server. If my backup is encrypted and you steal my backup, okay, have fun trying to decrypt it. sadly, a lot of folks are not encrypting their backups. What's a man-in-the-middle attack?
Man-in-the-middle attack is where someone can spoof either being the middle tier to the front tier and basically collect people's passwords as they're trying to log into a system. Or there have been a couple of man-in-the-middle attacks where they've slipped in between the middle tier and the back tier to understand the database calls. So it's basically slipping in between tiers to figure out how the communications work.
And are you guys all aware of a man-in-the-middle attack? I mean, yes, no, one person shook their head yes. So shook their head no. So, I mean, so we could definitely have training on this. And do we code against? Is there ways to code against a man-in-the-middle?
HTTPS for front end.
Okay.
It'll tell you, hey, this is a bad certificate.
Okay.
You still want to continue because it's hard to spoof the.
And we all say yes because we don't read those things anyway.
Read it, but usually when you see those things, you want to say no.
Okay.
Because it could be somebody watching.
And what is spoofing? Euler. Say again?
Mocking a location.
Could be mocking a location.
Could be mocking location. Could also be mocking that, yes, I am Bank of America. You should totally give me all your login information. That would be a spoof.
I mean, the easy way to spoofs are things like you steal the STG logo and you make a website that is STG Consulting and you simply flip the T and the L. So but we don't pay any attention to that. But we make it look like it's the STG site. And we go,
come to our site. Your account's in arrears. It's basically those phishing emails that you see.
Yeah, and phishing would be another one of stealing Crystal's email address. Yeah. And again, flipping that and having an email from Crystal, our president, come out to all of us saying, hey, we've implemented a new financial system. We need to, please log in and verify your information. We all go, oh, it's from Crystal. Okay, fine. And we go in and type stuff.
We've been fished into a spoofing site.
Is it a Nigerian prince?
She could be a Nigerian princess in her case.
Be a millionaire.
Yes.
There have been browser helper objects that actually insert the fake URL that matches like Bank of America.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of that we have to be aware of and protect as we're designing this. Cached data can be a gold mine. So as you're designing, in fact, you alluded to it about, where we keep cache data.
Is that where you hit the back button and everything is still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now in financial applications I use now, they use a photograph and a phrase. After I hit the ID number or the account number of my bank, it goes to a separate page, and there's a specific picture that needs to show up and a specific phrase that needs to show up with that before I enter my password. So how are those held differently? I mean, I'm assuming that's a level of security that somebody couldn't break in and find out what my image is and what my phrase is.
Yeah, that's basically the two-factor authentication. So yeah, my bank will send me will text me a number I have to type in. So that's another way of doing it where every time I log in, it's basically type it in, they send it.
America First, I just put in my account number and then I hit enter and then it goes to another page for me to enter my password. But there is an image that I've downloaded from their system plus a phrase that goes with that image.
What they're trying to do is let you know that, yes, you're talking to the real.
Right. So somebody's spoofing.
So if they're spoofing, they wouldn't have that.
Okay, so that security is
right.
such that that would be very difficult for somebody trying to spoof America First to know what those two things should be.
Yes.
Yeah, same thing with texting to my phone, because I have it kind of set the same way where I've got lockdown control for my bank. So when I log in, they send me, here's your code. It's 6 characters or 8 characters long, and I have to type that in. So it's a way of just verifying, yeah, okay, fine. We are sending you something.
But there's also man-in-the-middle attacks for that as well, with like what are they called? The phone, the SMS interceptors that they have. Yeah. So there's other levels like the Google Authenticator apps and
Truth
stuff.
be told, all security can be broken sooner or later.
Yeah. So there's always problems.
And then last but not least is to always be aware of social engineering at your clients. Do you all know what social engineering is? My joke is when you go to the haircut, you go get your haircut, except for some of you. He didn't even look up. I'm looking at Chick right now. But social engineering is learning about you just from BSing. Oh, where are you from? You know, what school did you go to? Oh, so you're married. How many kids do you have? Are they in school? I mean, when I go to get my haircut, it's amazing how much information I can learn from just sitting there waiting for my turn. Facebook, that's all over the news now about what we share on Facebook all the time. So we just talked about how to prevent these. And again, your practice leads are people to talk to about, you know, hey, what are good technique? What are resources? Now we get over here to what Shane brought up, which is working with the client. So how do we educate, encourage the client to do it the right way? What do you guys think? How do we, I'm looking at Chris and Jeremy, what do you guys think? How do we work with the client?
Usually try to educate them on what we're dealing with and what the consequences could be. Usually when you start explaining the financial consequences, clients tend to go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should probably implement that.
See, my attitude is I have such a good account manager, and he's so good at talking to people.
There's currently money being exchanged. Those of you who watch the video later can't see this, but you know, so client conflict. So what do we do when we see, hey, we're dealing with private or sensitive data, and the client is just like, yeah, I know, but let's just keep going. Because we know how the client is, right? They got to get this out. They got to hurry. What do you think we should do? Email all their customers. Yeah. That's always great for business. Yep, that'll keep us employed there. So what I can tell you that I've had to do, is it goes right back to what Chris said, is talk to your account manager first. So I've actually pulled in a talk with my account manager at a client because they had that credit card table. And at the time we're like, yeah, we know, but we really need to get this in. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, rules violation, laws and everything else. Like, yeah, we understand, but. So this comes back to that CYA part. So I contacted my account manager, Shane, at the time, and it was like, dude, you know, here's the situation. What do I do? I don't want to get in trouble if they come back and say, well, why'd you let this happen? So it really does come back to, we try to educate the client, give them links. In fact, this, you know, how do we protect ourselves? First off, document it. So emails, BCC your account manager, let them know what's up. But hey, you know, here's some proper techniques. Here's some links to the websites that are clearly saying you can't legally have this table.
And if they're stiff-necked by that point, document everything.
Yeah, document. But ultimately, now you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but assuming you're not doing anything illegal that's going to get you in jail, I did what the client wanted because I had talked to Shane and it was okay. You've let us know. We see the emails where you informed them that this was not the correct path. We are covered. And my little joke here is ultimately if the client wants square tires on that car, we put square tires on the car. Shane.
I think the cool part about the conversation we had a while back and what you're opinion here is come with a solution, not just like, hey, this is a big problem here. But hey, it's a problem, but here's the correct way to do it. Here's how we do it.
Yeah, so if we can go, we look better if we come in with solutions. Hey, we're seeing this, and either through our own knowledge, we're talking to our tech leads, practice managers, or our account managers, you know, we've got the information where we come in, we're always helping them to know what's up. And then, you know, seriously, whenever you're in doubt, you know, hit that practice manager, your account manager, HR if you need to. But, you know, we're here, STG is here to make sure that we are covered no matter what the client wants. You know, so STG has your back. And then last but not least, what can we do for you guys? And for those of you that are kind of watching or listening to this video later, email your account managers, your practice leads. But what would you guys like? This was designed to be a 100,000-foot level discussion on what is PII, what is HIPAA, what is PCI, be aware, be alert. What can we give you for additional training? Are you guys interested in additional training, brown bags, books, videos? Where do you all want to go from here? I mean, do you guys see a benefit to having front-end specific, maybe training sessions or a brown bag of what do you do? What do you do on the middle tier? What do you do on the database side? What do you think at levels per language? I mean, what's your thought?
With languages, each like .NET has certain tools. Yeah. Java's going to have certain tools. Python theoretically has certain tools for it. So I could see a by language use to it, but an overall one would probably be helpful too.
I mean, do you guys think that would be helpful? Would that be something? Is it, would just a generic training class that's on dealing with PII? I mean, how about spoofing, man-in-the-middle attacks? How about dealing with that? Is that something you would be interested in?
I'd be interested in seeing some of those attacks, setting up your tires.
It's illegal.
Okay, so Dahlon's trying to get us in jail right now, for the record.
No, I think it would actually see the attacks, not necessarily know how to do them, but just see the attack, so that then for each of us, in our specific disciplines, we could say, oh, well, this is how I could defend against something.
And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe Matt Chang, if he hasn't completed it, is awfully close to getting his ethical hacker certification. Has he completed that yet?
Yes.
So we do have a source who has been certified to be the good guy hacker. So, to me, he's an awesome source. I've pinged him occasionally with, hey, in your training and stuff, what did you see on the database side so I can be more alert for it? Just think about it. Please email any of the three of us or your practice leads, but we would love to have more training on this to benefit everybody at their different levels.
So once we put the security, it's not like milestone, we need to review, right? In the 6 month year, right?
Yeah, usually you want to troll through your logs, see if you've been under any attacks, identify what your security level is, because certain encryptions go out of date and are considered no longer secure. So you you being the client should have some sort of policy to review this every so often.
And obviously there's a whole network area we didn't even talk about, but that should be coming into play too. A network team should be paying attention, looking at logs. But it's just, there's so much we could go into. We could spend another full hour just on his side, on the middle, on me, on just what we've seen.
Yeah.
But was this to kind of give you guys an idea of what we have to worry about out there? Why we shake our head at Experian going, you guys are dealing with because I honestly have like all of that there. How could you be hacked? So ultimately what we wanted from this is for you guys to be aware, and then just to know, hit us up. Let's make sure that the clients are getting the best people out there that are knowledgeable on how to do this. You guys have any parting shots?
No, not really.
Good.
You guys are good?
So are you guys available?
No, I'm married.
Yeah, I'm married too. So.
Like, are your names listed?
I'm available.
He's single.
To send you an email if we have questions.
We should. We're on Slack.
No,
I think we're
on
on
Slack.
Slack, so.
Email. Yeah.
Got a question?
Yeah. No, we could create one though.
Could be an interesting channel to create.
Yeah, we can create a security Slack. Okay, cool. I think we're good, folks. Thank you. Autographs will be signed over here.
$100 autograph.
Yes. Isn't that what they charge at Comic-Con there? And do you want pictures with us? Those costumes.
Nobody on the
Oh yeah, that's PII.
You were sad or
Thanks for being here.
Oh yeah, for sure.